Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, first of all, to Christian and his team. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. And I must say that it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I see so many people, so many friendly faces, and I'm really delighted to be part of this event for many reasons. One of which, because I never expected that the Opus would have such a wide acceptance between people. Second, because it also took a lot of time, a lot of effort to finish it and to finish it well. And we are really, really proud to have finished this and to be able to present this project to you today, because it's really one of my favorites, and actually also one which you know, very also unique within the overall realm of our practices portfolio. So thank you again. It's a pleasure to be with you. And now I need to find out how I can progress the slides on my presentation to make sure that I have enough control so that we can speak about them. So basically, okay, I think I have it here. Can everybody hear me well? Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, Christos.
Yes.
Okay. So I hope it's not very late in the Philippines. I will speak to you about an hour, so I hope not many people will snore today. But I'm all ready to start. So our project for the Opus started in 2005, when Mr. Amjad came to our office. He was then starting his endeavors in Dubai, and he said, "Well, would you guys design a project for me? I want something very unique. I know Zaha, and I'm just wondering whether we can do something together." Zaha and I sat in the meeting room. We discussed the project, and in the end, of course, we were all very delighted. We had a good rapport, and of course we made this endeavor. Unfortunately, Zaha is not with us anymore, and we all lost an important person from our lives and from the design world and the world of architecture in general a few years ago. But for somebody who's been a mentor to me, and also someone who I worked with for many years, I'm very happy that we can finally submit this project to the world, and to say mission accomplished. In a way, this was one of the tasks, and Zaha was one of these rare visionaries that showed us a new way to make architecture with an outlook for justice and positive future vision. And we are grateful to her for this amazing contribution. And I say this without exaggeration, that for us, the generation that comes after her, we feel like we are sitting on the shoulders of giants when continuing this kind of work. Our practice now, a little bit about what we are and what we do, is a boutique office that designs unique projects. And in this sense, our contribution to the world of architecture has recently grown a lot in Asia as well, and in Southeast Asia, in some cases, mostly in Europe, and with some projects in the Middle East, but also quite a few in Europe. So we are a global practice, and if you look at all the projects that the group, the designers here are accomplishing, they are all almost appearing as otherworldly structures, and each one of them aims to be unique in that sense. So you know, the Opus is of course a project that is very dear to our hearts for many reasons, but also because of its simplicity of form and of message, and I think that is also its ultimate strength. And you know, I was mentioning before our meeting with Mr. Amjad, and when we first came to Dubai in 2005 to visit this site, and the Opus site is in this area here. The whole gray area is called the Business Bay, and it's characterized by this creek that eventually connects all the way to the sea down in the bay. And also, surprisingly enough, this project and this plot is very close proximity-wise to the Burj Khalifa. So you know, the epicenter of the, you know, the architectural landmark of Dubai and the Opus are in a relationship which we wanted to explore. And of course, because of the strength of this Opus statement, I think the city also chose to give the project a little bit of space, and of course in this way to treat it as a landmark itself, something for which we are you know, we're very grateful of. So as I was speaking before, the Opus is a project that started
Excuse
off.
me, Christos.
Yes.
Can you please share your screen?
Oh,
you have not shared your screen. We cannot see your presentation. Thank you.
I'm very sorry about that. So just give me a second, please.
There you go. Great.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, so
wonderful.
apologies, guys. I'm very sorry about that. So I'm gonna go a slide back to show, first of all, what I was speaking about before, which is the portfolio of our projects. As you can see, each one of them is kind of a unique architectural expression. The Business Bay with the creek that basically allows all of these buildings to have a good kind of community of buildings around the water. And this is the side of the Opus in close proximity to the #1 landmark in Dubai. And what I was saying is that essentially the city of Dubai have also decided to allow for ample space around the Opus, and that gives it also a certain you know, privileged position within the urban fabric of Dubai. So when we first started, this relationship between the Burj Khalifa, the extended you know, place, the extended urban fabric of the city necessitated for a project that was actually you know, we thought it should be unique. And if you can see some of the buildings next to it, they are still characterized by this initial master plan developed for the Business Bay, where each one of them of the buildings for these lots was meant to have a parking podium on the base, and then have a tower or two towers that were basically sitting on that podium. And that's where the architectural story of the Opus starts, because in a way, this project is all about wanting to eliminate the podium and wanting to free the building from that big kind of parking infrastructure, and allows it to, for the first time, to be a kind of a freer, freestanding building. And rather than having all the cars sitting on the street levels, we depressed those into the basement, and allowed for a 360 degree retail accessibility for the project on all four sides. That also allowed us to almost levitate or to lift the cube up so that it becomes more of a pure object as it sits in the landscape. So the idea was to take the two towers, which were part of the original master planning document, and instead of doing a twin tower project, the planning conditions would have allowed us to build a project that was 30 stories high, and there would have been two towers on either side, as you see here, of the atrium. Instead, what we decided to do was to depress the overall height of the building, and by creating a bridge and a connected podium roof on the bottom side, we were able to achieve a building that appears more like a cube, that is sculpted with a void, and that allowed us to create an object that speaks about a number of things, but predominantly about this relationship between solid and void, between those two eternal opposites that are always in some sort of coexistence. And what we feel that this project does is that it also uses its own form to be able to create a certain amount of self-shading, which is important for Dubai. But also in retrospect, and I'm thinking about that more and more now, having been with this project for almost 15 years, is how it's also a kind of a prototype of a three-dimensional urbanism. So this bridge that connects the view between the two sides of the building gives us also the opportunity to think about this as a loop, in a sectional loop that allows the movement of people inside this building to be able to to use the building as a kind of a continuum instead of a dead end structure like a tower. And of course, the placement and the of the void allows us to be able to see north and south, through to the desert on the south side, and also through to the sea on the north side, and then with the windows on the side to be able to also take a view toward the Burj Khalifa, so that we could enjoy this kind of spectacular views toward that incredible monument. Another aspect in the design of the Opus is also its facade. So besides the void and solid contrast, which was a very interesting instrument for us to be able to give sculptural form to what is an otherwise a simpler volume, was also the treatment of the facade. And from very early on, we started experimenting with ideas of facade as effect, but also facade as a veil and as a reflective element that would enable us to increase the solar insulation of the building from solar radiation, and to an extent to enable this building to have a kind of an all glass facade, but one that is articulated and ever changing. So in this way, you can also see in the slide on the top right hand corner how certain cuts were initially designed. These were meant to be like air flues that would allow air or kind of further subdivisions also within the offices. And in the end, through the development stage, this was one of the first almost like final views of the project that shows also the difference of the volume between the day and the night, meaning how the void comes alive during the nighttime. It becomes an element of light. It becomes an element of visibility versus the daytime, where you have a volume that is much more visible as a solid volume during the day. And I think that relationship between the void and the solid, the day and the night, is a theme that we've played on quite a lot, and within that also the idea of the highly defined geometrical edges that hold the project together gives this an extra meaningfulness and significance. These are some test models that we've done once the concept of the project was finished, and that shows the cube as a chromed object with a series of self-reflections appearing onto its void. And I think that is also important when we come to speak about how the facade was developed. This is another model that shows the structure, the floor layout, how the building internally is organized and proposed. And actually, we're speaking about a kind of a domino system, but except the edges and of course the point of incidence together with that internal void becomes a point of interest where all of those columns begin to bend, and also all the slabs begin to take form, curvilinear form out of the shape of the void. And that is to say that from an architectural or a tectonic point of view, that void is a matter of design, both in terms of rationalizing the facade, but also rationalizing the interior of the spaces, and also thinking about how the whole building is developed. So originally we had started with the Opus as a building that would have a retail zone on the ground floor, and that was actually quite important for the client. This is the plan, a roofless, what I call plan of the two levels on the ground that were to host a series of shops and other public facilities. And that was important for us because it would reinvigorate the idea of the sidewalk and make a building approachable rather than a building unapproachable by the placement of those parking lots that I spoke about earlier in the podium. And above the podium levels, we had a number of floors here in yellow that shows the areas where the offices are developed, and then at the very top we had penthouses and so on. Later on, during the course of the development of the project, the client decided to transform the ground level and install a hotel function, which was equally interesting in terms of its public urban space outlook, and transform the penthouses into a series of service apartments at the very top. So we went through the building volume at that point, and we looked how this kind of three-dimensional building structure, or this three-dimensional urbanism, the office zones, the hotel zones, the apartment zones are all becoming one kind of mechanism that allows this building to tick-tock during the day. And of course, looking at it more carefully, and this is a kind of an instrument we usually do to understand the buildings we design better, was also the how the building functions over a 24-hour cycle. We do this both with our master plans, but we also do this with our buildings now to understand how the flow of people through the building begins to change, and what areas of the building become more active and less active during particular hours of the day. Here, we have a section that shows essentially the solution to how to build such a project. This section is quite crucial. It's a very interesting drawing from the point of view that it does, lay the whole structure of the Opus bare to see, and the overall building is sitting on a rough foundation. It has a number of basement parking levels. This was the podium that was supposed to be above ground before, and we depressed it into the ground. There is some loading facilities here in the back, but the main atrium was always part of the main features of the Opus, and this was a sort of space of surprise, entering into the building and discovering what the Opus was about. And of course, what's interesting about this atrium is that the glass roof that you have here on level 3, 4, 5 can allow you to see through over to the bridge and all the way up to the sky from this point down here. The two towers are connected by a bridge. This is a living bridge, meaning it's a bridge that is occupied with apartments, so that those apartments have views on either side of the bridge looking up, and the overall outlook of this building obviously looks something like this. The entrances in this case, we've done a lot of designs for this project along the way of its 12-year development, and we tested different ideas. In this particular case, what you can see is a very thin metallic and mesh structure that was painted black, and that it was almost like a series of palm leaves kind of overarching onto each other and creating shade on the ground for the drop-off area of the hotel, while at the same time being very thin so that they don't absorb a lot of heat from the sun in Dubai. So it was also a way to make sure that we develop a kind of a component that would be very easily cooled down and not absorb a lot of heat, a lot of energy from the sun. And of course, it is looking into how entering this building, obviously under this big void, this void would work, and that brings me to the idea of the facade and the fritted facade, a facade which is almost I talk about it as if it's a sort of an artwork on this building. And we first started with very timid kind of drawings, how to proliferate a series of dots and find a way to fade them so that we can create variation and diversity on the way that the facade could work. But of course, making an artwork on a whole building is not an easy exercise, because there is a lot of logistics, the printing of the facade, especially when we were designing this about a decade ago, and also how to create stencils in a way to allow for a certain amount of repetition in the imprinting of these ceramic reflectors onto the facade. So taking you back to the beginning, this was the original drawing we had developed. This beautiful drawing where you see all the lines and the movement and the interruptions through allowed us to look at the void as a sort of almost like a kind of a black hole that absorbs these lines going into it. So it's a kind of an astronomical approach, but also appears almost like a weather map. So these lines are constantly flowing and moving around, and they create consistent, what we later came to call parametric, smoothness, but at the same time as having a little bit of points of intensity, points of sudden rupture and in a way transition from one side to the other. So you can see also these lines here, as much as you can see the smoothness and the transition of these lines. And of course, in rationalizing this and digitizing it in a way, this painting of sorts, this artwork, we also came to this conclusion. This is an unfolding of the facade of the four sides of the cube. And remember what I was telling you earlier about the rationalization of those fritting patterns. Well, actually, this is a drawing that sits behind. It's a digital drawing that describes every color, describes the kind of stencil we use to produce this very kind of unique artwork. And essentially, we developed 25 stencils, 25 unique prints that we mixed and matched and organized, composed onto this facade, so that we can develop this effect. Now, I'm talking a lot about this, and one would ask, well, why go through all that hassle? Well, there is one important point in the Opus that one should not overlook, which is, you can see here, this is Fivos, and this is Vincent Novak, our project architect when we were designing this building. And essentially what that image shows is a mock-up of the glass when we first went to the factory that was producing the design that we wanted. And you can see how you can see both of them onto that glass screen at the same time. And therefore, what this suggests is that the Opus has a facade that plays the game between reflection and transparency. And at the same time, and it does that at the same time. So at the Opus, and you will see it in some of the later images, has this kind of very interesting ability to reflect the surrounding environment around it, but at the same time to allow you to see within it. So it's neither a pure mirror nor a piece of clear glass. It sits in that in-between zone. And we found that very fascinating as a scheme, and that's why we proposed it. The client liked it, and I think it does a lot with the building. One of which is it changes every time the sky changes. It goes from very dark and gloomy to very bright and shiny. So I think it has also that kind of change in character. And this is a little bit the technical solution that was proposed with the different types of stencils. So these are all gradients going from 100% solid to 10% solid here, and that way we can create lines that have that kind of fading effect onto the building. Now, digital tools were not always as advanced as we have today, and of course the thing with digital tools is that they're always advancing. The project that we've done previously to the Opus, which was the Fenno Science Center, also we couldn't find perfect tools for what we wanted to do. So every project for us is also a bit of an intense point of intention and tension with what's available in terms of software. But what we wanted to do here in this particular case was to take the volume of the surface of the void and to begin to rationalize and make it into a feasible, constructible, buildable proposition. And these first silver drawings allows us to see two things. First of all, how it gives us more clarity how the surface bends, but at the same time, it gives us also an opportunity to see how the reflections on this surface begin to play out, so that we can have smooth reflections throughout the project. So you can look at the drawing like this, and this is the rationalized version of that void. And you can see the strict rationality and the geometrical discipline that goes into developing an object like this. But at the same time, this will not show you the reflections. But we had to design and to review both of those elements in making this facade what it is. So speaking about the surface analysis first, we used a lot of analytical tools to be able to create a kind of a system for creating, in a way, economy, material economy, and reducing the complexity of this project. And where you see red lines, red panels here, red surfaces, red colors, this is where the panels are completely flat. The blue panels are the panels that are singly curved, and the green here it changes, but essentially the green ones is where we may have double curvature in the building. So because this is a free form, we wanted to make the statistics of this in such a way that the doubly curved glasses are limited to the absolute minimum. And I think we managed to get it down to 10 or 12%. We had about 20% of single curved pieces that are a lot less expensive to make. And the other, 65% of the facade of the glass was all flat glass. And therefore, this made it also, in terms of feasibility, it made it possible for the client to approve it and to say yes. So we went through a few cycles of these. We did the so-called Gaussian analysis so that we can test which regions needed to be designed how. But also, quite importantly, we looked at the ways with which we could begin to, facet the glasses so that we can get further economy in it without necessarily compromising the reflectivity aspects of the facade. And this is one of the ways that we thought that the panel size and the maximum bends. So cold bending was one of the techniques we used. This is now widely employed by contractors and architects in many different buildings. But we also did another thing. In order to be able to deal successfully with the reflection that this building would produce, we did a number, it was a big number of photorealistic analyses. I'm not showing them fully here, but the photorealistic analysis was allowing us to test when we have two pieces of glass that are flat, or even flat and cold bent, meaning warped in a way, what would be the maximum angle that we could break the two pieces of glass so that we can have visually smooth reflection on this piece. And the numbers that you see here are actually the outcome of that condition that allowed us to suggest that if we break a glass up to 2 to 2.5 degrees, then that would give an overall smoothness to the object that would be almost imperceptible to the human eye. And that gave us a lot of additional visibility into the overall object. And this is one of those photorealistic drawings that we did. So this is actually quite precise, and you can see how the reflection of the building onto itself does not break down and become a mess. So this was something that was also highly controlled. Later on, when the design was almost finished, we started testing these, and we started seeing how, in these examples here, especially the two images on the right-hand side, you can see how the reflectivity of the glass begins to play an interesting game in shade and shadow in terms of how it reflects and how it becomes transparent. But at the same time, also the faceting of the glasses, how it comes together to create something that is faceted, but at the same time, in the bigger view of things, becomes actually very nicely smooth, and you can see the results here. It's quite nice the way that's been done, isn't it? So this was a lot to do with this facade story, and a lot of our time actually went into developing these features of the facade. So taking you back a little bit, I wanted to speak about the concrete work as well. This is the building after the basement was finished. So here we are almost nearly on the ground level. So all the basement levels have been built. The building has two cores that were lifted up with moving formwork as the construction went through. And then here you can see how the building looked like when it was under construction. And you can recognize here these V-shaped transfer zones where the external columns of the building shift and they turn into the inner waist of the building to allow the cube form to float over the ground. And you can see also the columns, how they bend and they adapt to the flexibility of that to the flexing of that facade, and how these two towers essentially came together to create that one whole that we know today as the Opus. Then this is a photograph during the installation of the facade, and this makes the point of how the building reflects and makes transparent the environment that it sits in. So this effect is a zero thickness essentially effect that reflects and allows light to go through. And you can see here one more feature of the building where all the columns were set back by 2 meters inside the office spaces, so that the facade remains uninterrupted from bay to bay to bay to bay. And that also allowed us to optimize essentially the visual lines from inside the building toward the outside. So whether you have cubicle offices, subdivisions, or whether you have open plan offices, these kind of architectural approach gives you much better visibility toward the outside. So moving on, I spoke about the atrium a little bit earlier, and of course the roof of the atrium is something that also underwent quite a significant number of iterations and development. In this case, you're seeing the trellis, the steel trellis that is basically holding this roof up. And although in Dubai it only rains once a year, if so, we still had to design a roof that would be able to deal with gushing of water if that would, and whenever that happens. But at the same time, one of our other concerns was that when we are building up this trellis, we wanted to allow for maximum visibility from inside the space to the outside. So instead of making all the elements of these deformed grid into equal uniform members, we created primary members and secondary members so that we can increase, and you can see here on the lower left-hand side image, we can increase the support span to 9 by 9 meters, and then have 9 pieces of glass with thinner profiles within it, so that we have a much thinner kind of structure and visibility through. Of course, a lot of digital design and fabrication went into the making of this project. And here you see some images during the construction of this roof, with the workers there are showing you also the size of these elements and what kind of almost like a mega structural piece of work that it was to put this together. But also cladding it, which was the other effect of what I spoke about, and making sure that we maintain maximum transparency through what is essentially the space that sits underneath this big void, and which is the atrium, where during the development of the hotel, we designed these balconies. The client and the operator, Meliá Hotels, which is one of the most wonderful hotel brands in the world, because their hotels are always very exciting and semi-casual, and you feel free when you go to them. They have a very nice feel to them. So what we wanted to do for them was to develop a kind of a set of balconies that would allow people to sit on these edges and overlook this kind of big atrium space inside. And this is what the end result looks like. You can begin to see on the ground floor the glossy white marble surface, and also the Ottoman lounges, which we designed as bespoke furniture pieces by selecting this kind of colors and combinations of colors to give a sort of look and feel of a kind of an arabesque lounge, and the space that where people can feel comfortable to sit there, meet their friends, but at the same time not to be in one huge space. On the balcony itself, you can see what we call the petalina, and I will show you some of these elements a little bit later. These were designed and developed between ZHA and ZHD, our sister design company. And together, all the furniture pieces that you see here in this image are designed by us, by Zaha Hadid. These are wider views of that atrium, and you can see the roof, as I told you about before, and you can certainly see through. And what is essentially this atrium is represented by this white set of flower petals that is like a white bouquet of lilies, and in a way sits over this beautiful airy lobby in the middle of the hotel. So that was during construction. This is now the final result. And when looking up inside this building, you get this kind of sense of the three-dimensionality of the building, even from this very much entry space. Something more about the facade, but also the swimming pool of the Opus, which goes hand in hand with the hotel, of course. The corridors to the room, so we go from a very wide, bright, and airy and lofty space into a series of corridors that are much more dim in terms of light, with beautiful wood veneer on the surfaces of the walls, and bronze and pink champagne gold trimmings on the surfaces as you go into the room. And the logic here, of course, was to create a sense of hardness to softness. So it's again about that transition from one opposite to the other, where the guest to the hotel moves from this kind of space, which is much more airy and wide and more marble-like, into this kind of space, which is much more softer, with carpet on the floor and with wood veneer and so on. So yeah, the atrium, the section of the atrium in this case, so that you can see the white flower overlooking into the main atrium. These decks become the reception area. Then you have a cafe, then you have a patisserie, and then you have a space for events all the way at the top. And that is also part, or you can play music, you can invite a DJ who can stand on that balcony. So there's a series of kind of projections into the space that allows the hotelier to use them in the different ways that they may want. One of the more practical, constructive views of this space and how it looked like during construction, with a myriad of steel elements coming together and making sure that we have the possibility to develop something like this. This is one of our renderings. This is what we had originally proposed, and these, you can see here how it was developed and how it was executed in a very nice way. And you may also notice behind these white walls here a series of treatments on the facade. These are kind of bronze pieces of glass that are basically showing us the entrances into what is essentially the restaurants and the club and the patisserie in the areas of the hotel. So the hotel lobby is basically the space that connects the two sides of the Opus. So these are two main streets on the top and the bottom of the site plan. And basically this lobby becomes almost like a kind of a flask that brings us, somebody is writing in the screen, that brings us into the, I don't know, can you see my mouse when I'm pointing at this at all, Christian? Is that visible?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, all right. So the two drop-off points, we are coming in through the reception desk, is placed against the wall here. The Arabesque Lounge in the middle, and these are the columns, the footprint of the columns into the space. The lifts leading up to the hotel, and then exiting on this other side here. The spaces adjacent to these are outlets. So essentially, we have a number of outlets, for steakhouses and cocktail bars, a very nice Italian restaurant, etc., that are occupying the spaces, and they are accessible both from the outside, but also from the inside of the space itself. So all of these levels are when now in these photographs, the hotel is of course empty for the photography, but you can imagine this place full of guests and how those columns begin to define the space. I think this is also one of the aspects I wanted to speak about. We developed this design as a way to be able to give a little bit of hue and definition in the whiteness of the form. And each one of these shadow gaps that you see here essentially become, part of the lighting lines that are installed in the building and how they light up the whole building. So these were developed with wide LEDs, of course, but inside each one of those coves, there is hand-painted pink gold highlight so that it can treat the color and make it a little bit more yellowish. And this is also quite visible here. You can see this is the all-day dining opening out into the terrace and underneath the atrium. So the space we've been discussing recently can be used both for the hotel activities, movement of people, restaurants, people sitting, dining, or speaking to each other, etc. But at the same time, this space forms also quite a beautiful gallery that can become a cultural space. I think one of the ambitions of Mr. Amjad is to turn this into a cultural space and invite artists to make installations inside here and create a kind of an ongoing program of events that will always give character to this space. And of course, within it, part of the exercise that we had done to reinforce this approach was to design a series of these bespoke elements. In this case, these are called the petalinas. They're essentially sofas, but they are formed, the whole, if I can explain it like this, the whole furniture fit out of the Opus is developed on the basis of these aquatic life forms, whether they are like petalinas or whether they are these kind of sea flowers here that all come together into one ecosystem. On the other hand, these are the designs, the technical designs for the doors that are giving us the orientation toward the restaurants. And of course, you will see and possibly recognize also the pointy arches. So each one of these is creating a kind of a dome structure that signifies the entrances into those spaces. So the hotel and actually maybe, yeah. So from here, you can also see the Arabesque Lounge, where we've developed these pods that are carpeted, and one can take their shoes off when they're going up on this pod and can sit down. So we created these as places where you can have companies of people, groups of friends coming together to sit, or if there is a kind of a little informal meeting, or if you're expecting to receive someone, you also have your own little kind of pod, your little territory, to enable people to come together rather than these big blank, endless hotel lounges. So, we want to create a spirit of intimacy here. So warmer colors. We wanted the stuff to be, of course, easily visible and accessible, but at the same time to not be intimidating. We've designed their reception desks with marble, with integrated lighting inside, and a lot of the integration of the computer screens, touch screens, and so on in there. So we went to this kind of extent and degree to be able to develop something that is as clean as this. So a lot of work from highly conceptual work to very, very detailed and kind of articulating work to make sure that the result is nice and clean and simplified. So some of those spaces, and of course here what I wanted to show you as well is the plan of the hotel. This is the upper level. And the way this hotel plan works is that we have a kind of a corridor, the wooden clad corridor that I showed you before, that runs perimetrically to the core, where we have all the services and the accessibility for staff. And then we have suites, junior suites in the corners of the building. So these designs were developed taking into account the hotel operator's brief. Smaller standard rooms called auras, and the vibe rooms here, they're slightly larger standard rooms, and then the junior suites at the corners. So this is the vibe room, I believe, which basically is the largest of the standard rooms. And here, the take we had was that we wanted to basically give a big and sort of luxurious bathroom to each one of these standard units. We had the so-called maxi bar and the bed that we have designed. We also designed the sofa bed for the rooms, but it was later on removed to allow more space in the bedroom itself. But we also developed two types of bathrooms. One bathroom was in black marble, the other one was in white marble. And we also took the initiative to contact one of our trusted suppliers, Porcelanosa, and we developed together with them this bathroom range, which is one of our first complete series of products that we've done, where we developed the bathroom and the wash basins, the shower, the bidet, the toilet, all as one set of objects. And the Opus features this product line as our first project on the market. So the design of the rooms is something that we've taken a lot of consideration in, and we looked into different ways how to organize them in a way that they're simple and clean. We've designed the bed and also the backboard behind the room. Finely textured wallpaper on the wall, and then we also had marble slabs on the counters sitting over walnut effect cabinetry. So the rooms were developed in two conditions. One was the midnight desert, where we chose blue tones almost close to black, and also slightly beige tones to show the locale. And in this case, this is the other version of the apartments, of the hotel rooms. In this case, this is called an Aurora themed room, which deals with a different set of colors, but also being a suite. The bathroom here is in a much larger, obviously, space. The bed is opening out through the corner, overlooking, Dubai and the area of the business bay. But we also designed this sort of work and play pieces of furniture in order to be able to create a unique piece of furniture that would be both for work, meaning the desk that would be very much adapted to this particular room and in this particular place, and the play sofas where you could sit and relax and recreate during your stay in this hotel. And this is the other kind of type of room, with using the same bed with slightly different colors, a different graphic on the wall, and a slightly lighter palette. And this is the end result and what it looks like. The bed, which was always of primary importance to the design, and it's for the hotelier especially, is the number one feature of every hotel room. So we paid particular attention to that, to integrate a lot of technology inside the frame of the bed, and to allow allow for these backrest, which instead of putting it vertical, we've placed it in a way that it's almost on an incline, so you can see and rest back on the bed, or even pull it up a little bit and make it a little bit more vertical for back support. And here you can see the two different colors, the darker blue and the lighter beige color for the different types of bedrooms. These are some of the living rooms in the suites and in the apartments, where you can see the shelving design. These are the slump chandeliers. The version that we used in the Opus is the gold version, which was designed specifically for this project. Some of our ZHT pieces. These are the candelabras, the carpet on the floor, which is cut here a little bit back so that one can allow entrance allows the door to open and entering into the bedroom. And this is the Opus sofa, which was designed with the form of the hotel, of the building in mind, and then it later on became also a product for the project itself. So, simple spaces, but with nicely finished, nicely selected furnitures and bespoke designs inside. And this is another version of the room. And another one of the types of rooms here with all the walnut veneers on the walls, allowing glass subdivisions between the living room and the bedroom to allow for more transparency and light coming in through the facade, the bathroom in the back, and the walk-in closet there on the side here. So talking about bathrooms, this is the Opus bathrooms with the mirrors designed. These are all Vita range by Nokian products, and these were all designed by ZHA to have these kind of elongated wash basins that appear like corals. And a kind of a nickel chromed tab at the top, which is motivated with a sensor, a bathtub that looks like an oyster shell that is featuring an overflow to fill in the bathtub. Here on the right hand side is the shower with a fixed shower head, but it creates a kind of a rain effect. And really a simplified design with book matching pieces of marble, so that we can have a very simple and fine experience. So from the rendering to the actual result, here you can see the design and the mirrors, and how the whole thing comes together in a hotel setup, with the cosmetics in place, and the reflection on the marble was also quite important, etc. And this is the set, and that's the final result. And in a nutshell, I think this brings us to a close. This is the Opus, inside and out, looking at itself and looking at the environment. I think, yes, as I said in the beginning, we're very proud to have accomplished this project, and it's been a labor of love for a number of years. But I think the results of this are due to Zaha, of course, but also to Patrick Schumacher and all the people, from 100 or so people who worked on this project over the years. Both HPA, who worked with us on the interior design, the local architects, PSBG, BG&E, who were the structural engineers, Agnes Koldai and Koldai Facades, who has been with this project since the beginning, and also the contractor Brookfield Multiplex, who's done a great job on this project, and of course the hotel operator Melia, who are very kind of forward-looking people, and they know the hotel business very well. And I could say that I think it's a good match, a very good match for the Opus, and a blessing to have them to run this hotel over the next years. And here I would like to leave you with this photograph. We've been looking at the Opus as an object for all of this time, but it does sit in the city. It is a kind of in a way, a contextual project. It's not a simple contextualism. It's a much more complex contextualism, but it sits nicely within the space, I think, and it also alludes to a new kind of urbanism, a new way of thinking about buildings, a new way of thinking about the building as an inventory of the city, and not only within its realm as a real estate piece of property, but something more than that. And credit for this beautiful picture goes to Lorian Kinitoyu, one of our photographers, and also Omniat, who have been behind this building all along. And we thank them very much for giving us this opportunity. As I would like to also thank you, all the Architects chapters who have made this event possible and given me the opportunity to speak to you about this project today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Christos. With high respect and gratitude to you, Christos Passas, and to Zaha Hadid Architects. Thank you so much. Maraming salamat on behalf of like over 1,500 participants today, both in FB Live and in Zoom participants. Thank you so much. Now we will go before we go to our Q&A, we have our two reactors who will give their insights and takeaway from Christos' presentation. We have UAE Abu Dhabi Chapter President.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hindi daw siya makapag-unmute. Paki-unmute na lang.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right. Hi, my name is Jay Bertoldo, and I'm from the UAP Abu Dhabi chapter. Thank you very much, Christos, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing your time with us and for doing this presentation to almost 1,000 participants here via Zoom and maybe another 1,000 via the Facebook Live. I think we are being viewed all around the globe right now. And I'm sure everyone will agree with me if I say that you have inspired architects, professionals from the design industry, members of the Architecture Academy, and especially our students of architecture from the Philippines. You have inspired us to be a better version of ourselves and motivated us to make every effort to achieve excellence in whatever we do. I appreciate how you have shared with us the collaborative thinking and cultural philosophies of Zaha Hadid Architects, the commitment of the firm to that shows through your design's fluidity, innovation, originality, and visionary thinking of the relationship between humans and buildings. They are insightful and inspiring. I also admire the Opus as a brilliant building that appears to hover above the ground, definitely visually stunning, but at the same time, a workable space that allows every occupant to have an exceptional experience of its environment while using the latest technological advances. So we all know that Zaha Hadid Architects is one of the leading architectural firm that produces some of the most amazing and futuristic buildings ever conceived that unquestionably shape architecture in our present time. So I just want to ask if you can share us your thoughts on how the current situation that we are in, the pandemic, will reshape the future of architecture. Again, thank you to you, Christos.
Jay, thank you for your wonderful words. You really make me feel very modest with all your kindness, and I think in some way, having seen all those beautiful faces earlier, I feel like I am among a group of friends. It's one of the very few conferences where I genuinely feel I'm within so much friendship, and you guys are absolutely amazing.
You are most welcome.
Thank you very much. You ask an interesting question that I don't know how to answer. What happens to architecture now in the pandemic? And you know, I don't know what to make of this pandemic yet. I must tell you a number of things, and maybe you can extract some of your own conclusions, each one of us. Number one, this was a horrible thing that happened that created a lot of desolation in the world, and of course, in that we saw a number of things. I saw personally people learning to how to cook their own bread for a change. I saw people taking care of each other more. I saw a learning curve in terms of how we all deal with, especially in the West. I think in the East, things are slightly more different because people are more community minded. But in the West, with a lot of the individualist kind of philosophy that and approach that people have, I think we've come to a point where there is a bit of a learning curve how to think about yourself within the whole, you know, and of course, you know, what happened is a terrible thing, this pandemic, because in many ways we don't know when it's going to end. And personally, I'm fed up with not being able to use the space, my city, you know, everything that we all learned how to use before with the same ease as before. But I also feel the obligation to do also my best to make this thing work yeah, as part of society, to make it work for all of us. At the same time, you know, what happens to architecture now? I think the need to have humans come together is a fundamental human need, and I don't think we should forget that. I think that whether that becomes a group of a family, first of all, or a group of friends, or a club in a city, or a public space and a square in the city, or an urban lobby, or anything like this. I think those spaces are needed for us to be able to socialize and to exchange. And, you know, before the pandemic, I often spoke about the need to invigorate public spaces in cities. You know, there's a lot of privatization going on, and I think that should always be counterbalanced with the provision of free space, of public space that allows people to come together. I think that's very important. The situation now, I hope, will be overcome in some way that will allow us to still you know, interact with each other without. I was looking at somebody yesterday was showing a helmet, a glass helmet that supposedly we should all wear as if we are in outer space here on Earth. I think that's ridiculous, personally. I hope that we will be able to recover from this situation without all of us having to fit such instruments on our bodies, and to find a way to get over this hurdle in a good way. Does architecture change? I think yes. I think this virus will have some effect. I think it's important to also understand that the medical aspects of the virus and the interpretations of that you know, different other groups want to implement because of the virus be separated. Because I think one thing is the medicine, another thing is to use the occasion of the coronavirus to implement all sorts of other things in society as well. And how does architecture change? Well, I go to my daughter's school. She's 4 years old. She just went to preschool the other day, and their classrooms are looking like tennis courts, you know. So we went from Neufert to a tennis court organogram to be able to subdivide classrooms. Is that the right way? I don't know. I don't really believe that that is going to be the point right now, but I also don't want to, in a way, prophesize what may happen in the future, because nobody knows. But I think, you know, I often say, like when September 11 happened, you know, 3 months after the event, so in December or January, February, March of 2012, we didn't actually know where we were going to be today. You know, I think humanity moves in ways that are rather unpredictable. But I think what we did learn is that you know, some of the measures that were implemented were a little bit too extreme. Some of them were good for people, and I think we have to kind of continuously be alerted to find the reasonable ways to resolve this medical crisis. But I really don't want to say much more, because I do think that the prime purpose of architects will always be to design public spaces, you know, and maybe we're designing private buildings, but they always have to have a public space. We always have to think about the urban sphere. We always have to think of community. And going back to, maybe this is the answer. I'm thinking out loud now. If we learned something because of a terrible event, then, you know, that how an individual can be within a community and how a community can work together, then maybe our buildings should be doing something similar along that way. So very much pro, you know, the advancement of technology, but I think that always needs to be counterbalanced with the idea of ecology. And I think we need to start developing technology for ecological purposes. Now we need to take care of the planet. And I think when we speak about ecology and sustainability, medical issues are always equally relevant to this effect. So I think what may happen, if I have to put myself out there, is that we see an invigorated intention for an ecological or eco-technological, as I call it, kind of paradigm, where the ideas about, you know, positively and managing the planet well, together with the development of the technologies that we have, can hopefully go hand in hand, so that we can have we can become good managers of our home, basically, and not treat it like trash. You know.
All right, thank you for that. We have now the second reactor from Oman, chapter president Michael Ranyola.
Hello, hi Christos.
Hi, Michael.
A pleasant day and evening to you. And
Likewise.
also a big shout out to all our Filipino global architects, architecture aspirants, and participants who are here with us today. The presentation which we just witnessed today is simply priceless. I'm sure
Thank
all
you.
of us here will agree with me when I say that Zaha Hadid and her team had been and will always be a legend in our field. Her vision and imagination, made real through the efforts of Zaha Hadid Architect Studio, will never cease to amaze us. From the inception of each project concept through its design stages, all the way to the execution and construction of the project without losing its meaning and context. Truly, each work is a work of art. The playful and dynamic combination of the volumes, the fluid forms, that is the signature of Zaha Hadid, is very inspiring and a mystery to most of us to a point that it becomes intimidating. Intimidating in a way that we love the shape, but we cannot fully comprehend why it is beautiful. So through the Opus project, which you have presented with us tonight, we are able to get a glimpse of what makes Zaha Hadid Architect's signature beautiful. It somehow unmasked a portion of the mystery without losing, but rather intensifying our amazement in the creation of such complex structure. A walkthrough from how the Opus began with its prime consideration to the master planning, from the master planning through the design concept of space layouts, the level developments, the details development of the building facade, the glazing shell, the concrete and steel structural elements, how the column defines the spaces and the complex roof structure, up all the way up to the design finishes, the customized fit-out works, and all the way to the FF&E, which contributed to the totality of this great landmark. So this symposium is a momentous and a refreshing and motivating experience for all of us. You have given us a great overview, not only of the Opus project, but the general overview of the design approach, processes, methodologies, innovation, and practices of Zaha Hadid Architects. So for that, Christos, thank you so much. And honestly, I don't have much question. I will leave that to the questionnaires from the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, sir.
All right, we'll go now to the question and answers, and we have tons of questions. Yeah, I mean, we've been collecting questions from Facebook and then from the chat box, and then we have from the emails, and we selected a few. So yes, take it away, Manila Centrum, Rizal Kalayaan, Malolos Republica, and Daraga Cagsawa chapter presidents.
Good evening, Architect Christos. As you can see, we have a lot of questions in the chat box. If only we have a lot of time to read them all. We have filtered a few questions for you tonight. First question comes from Architect Jonel Castro. I have a question with regards to Opus Void. Due to its location in Dubai, which are known for having a strong solar beam, how did the designer address the problem of sun's strong beams jumping off a bent surface on one side of the internal void and reflect to the other direction?
Okay, I think I spoke, thank you first of all, Jen. I think I spoke about this a little bit earlier when I said in the initial slides, when I showed how the building self-shades. So by the placing of the bridge on the south side of the building, I think it gives us an opportunity to use the volume of the bridge as a shading element. But at the same time, the use of the black glass helps us to minimize the amount of reflection that we get by the return back of sun rays from one volume onto another.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Architect Leandro Lorente. Zaha would boldly mention that detailing and craft is not a key part of the direction of her office. Did this view change over time under the leadership of Patrick? And how was the build quality during handover, considering the complexity of building form?
To be honest, I don't think that Zaha ever said that. I think Zaha, as I, were such perfectionists that I don't think we would leave detailing and craft out of it. I think actually detailing and craft are both key parts of the direction of any design. And to be honest with you, we spend a lot of time dealing with those issues. Because we do want to have finesse and good quality and longevity in what we design. So, you know, having the possibility to see a project through from the beginning to end, and we do try to do that all the time, because irrespective if we are the people who develop the concept and the schematic design and the design development. Often the detailed design happens by others, but we do cooperate with our collaborators across the world, and we always have a view, and we have an opinion, and we also offer advice and direction about this issue. So I don't want anybody to be left with the impression that we do not care about detail. On the contrary, I would say.
Okay, thank you, sir. I'll turn you over to Architect Anna of Daraga for the next question. Architect Anna.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
I'm Architect Anna. Here's another questions from the participants. Was it intended on purpose or just coincidental that instead of opting for a traditional phallic structure, the Opus stands in contrast from the surrounding buildings by reflecting ionic form? Thank you.
Yeah, of course it was intended. Absolutely. I mean, the design did not just come out just like that by luck. As I said, we had the opportunity to design 2 towers, a twin tower project with about 30 stories high. And actually, what I didn't mention earlier, I think is also quite interesting. When we squeezed the building down and we made it 20 stories high, in order to be able to retain the overall area that the GFA allowed us to build, we had to fatten in a way the project, and that gave us a unique opportunity to have a very efficient building in terms of its overall gross to net area. But you know, all of those considerations are what are playing together. What am I saying now? Instead of a phallic object, we're doing a ionic form, and in a way, it also becomes more efficient. It is possible that this is the answer to your question.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Another question, sir. What considerations were considered in terms of maintenance, cleaning the materials like the metal skin and glass, and climate management? Dark colors will absorb heat. From Architect Felicissimo Tejuco, Jr.
Okay, it's a reasonable question, and you know, of course, we have undertaken through the design stage all the studies that needed to be taken in terms of cleaning the glass, and I think at the end we agreed that upsailers, which are you know widely available in Dubai because of all the high-rise buildings, are probably the best way to clean the higher parts of the building, including the underbelly of the bridge, and the lower levels are cleaned by long kind of ladders and you know 20-meter long brushes and stuff. I think that's how they do it. In terms of client management, the dark colors, do they absorb heat? I don't know. I know they absorb light, but I'm not sure they absorb heat in a way. And I'm not being funny about it. I think a glass, you know, the sandwich, the glass sandwich always has its own insulation qualities. And although the outer surface of the glass may absorb a certain amount of heat, that doesn't necessarily mean that that heat gets absorbed also to the inside. So you know, that is meant to say that you know, the insulation factor of the building has been designed according to the standards of the time when we had designed it, and this was the result.
Okay, thank you so much for that, sir.
Thank you.
Architect Jaime will read the next question.
Good afternoon, Christos.
Hi.
Another question from Felicissimo Tejuco Jr. How receptive or open-minded was the client with the void concept? How much details did you have to present or explain for the client to approve the final design?
No, I must say that the client was both very receptive and open-minded about the project. What Mr. Amjad wanted from the beginning was a kind of a simpler building, and I think we often discussed how this project was aimed at being a commercial masterpiece. We did do a lot of studies and presented a lot of studies to them about the project, not only about the void itself, but also about the exterior, and I think they genuinely liked the building, both for its kind of strong impact and the simplicity of the message. So I think he was always supportive of this project, and that shows because obviously we're all here discussing it now.
Thank you for that answer. Another question from Joshua Sanico. Are there any particular seismic issues and or unique special treatments for such seismic issues incorporated in designing, particularly in the foundation of the bridge above?
I think Dubai is not in a very high risk seismic area, but please, I don't know about it. These are engineers' domain. I don't know it very well, but I do know that when we were designing the bridge, there is a certain amount of flexibility in the structure, and of course it connects into the two cores on either side. But I think there are no dampers like you do in a building in California, for example, or somewhere in the Mediterranean. But there is a certain amount of flexing.
Okay, thank you for that answer again. Back to our Architect Jen.
Thanks, Architect Jaime. Next question. We have a few last few questions, Christos.
Of course.
In building the Opus, what is the greatest challenge that your team encountered in terms of translating the design into the construction process? From Architect Agina Lahupay.
Thank you for the question. I think undoubtedly the biggest challenge was the facade. You know, it's not only because the geometry of the facade is complex in a certain way. It's also because it's diverse, and it has a lot of different regions that require different things. So we're cladding a bridge, we're cladding two towers, we're cladding those two towers with two types of facade systems that are generally different. One is very flat and fritted, the other one is very body tinted, dark and more curved. And I think that, together with the 2 points that I discussed in my lecture earlier, one which was to rationalize the glass system and make it commercially feasible. And the second one was to make sure that the reflections of the building appear beautiful and smooth, as if it's a monolithic object, were definitely the 2 most critical questions here.
Thank you. We have the next question. ZHA are known for its multifaceted concept and fluid design. Do you consider your projects as precision engineering? This is from Franklin Pedraja.
Thank you, Franklin. Yes, the simple answer is yes. They do need precision engineering. Yeah.
Thank you, Architect Anna.
So, sir, for the last question, this is from Clinton Taraya. We have seen that Zaha and the rest of the team had pushed the forms into extraordinary limit of geometrical volumes, essentially which portrays nature's undulating forms of elements. How did you deal with the logic of consistency when it comes to structural fixations and accuracy degree of alignment? What significance you can share? Thanks.
Thank you, Clinton. So let's try to understand this question a little bit more. you're saying that the geometrical volumes and their curvilinear undulating forms, how do you structure those in terms of a structural framework, and what happens with the tolerance and the degrees of alignment? Okay, so you know, this is obviously part of the specialist knowledge that we've developed in the company over the last 20, 25, 30 years. It's true that our group, our team here, have built some of the more complex buildings in the world. And in that sense, we've developed some unique knowledge in this respect. So to answer your question is, first of all, every building is different. Second of all, there is the point that there is always structural engineers who work very closely with us and advise us on how these structural elements would be installed inside the building. But the point that I want to get to is that the structure should never be foreign to the building that you're trying to design. In other words, the structural form and the architectural form should be very much aligned. They cannot be two different things. You cannot have a structural engineer who thinks about how to structure the building without understanding the architecture. And you cannot have the architect who is trying to build a building without understanding what are the limitations of the engineer. So, you know, for example, our Fenno Science Center was also a very complex structure. We had a large roof over the whole building. We had to work with the design of that roof, and we had to align all the elements together so that we have a so-called integrated design. So the integration of the design is the way to go.
Na-affirm na naman.
And also, I think in
si structure ko na sila yung santo dati pa. Na heart.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Sinabi sa na si Bernard umatin man.
I can still hear someone on the...
Si Bernard nindot na magibo na lamang ning salamin ang nakikita pa sa availability ng mga installer.
Nag-clock ko. Hello?
Mute.
Nawala ang audio.
It seems like I'm muted. Okay, so maybe I can just say the last piece of what I wanted to say. So integrated design is the way to go with these structures. And of course, between the different systems of the building, glass, structure, MEP systems, you always have to have a little bit of tolerance so that you can fit one system into the other. But it's clear that you have to have precision. So you cannot accumulate errors from one system and then build them into the other, because, you know, if you have a lot of errors in on the structure, you will end up having a lot of you know, patchwork to do in the glass. So I think the two the limiting the degree of error and developing more precision is always key in these projects. Thank you. Any other questions?
All right, that's the last question, but I'll take the last question, Christos, if you
Please
don't
do.
mind.
Of course.
Okay, so I mean, this is not a question, but I just want to get a message from you to our future, because we have like 1,000 future architects, Filipino architects here watching you. So is any message to them?
Any message to them? Yes, there is a message to them. I would like to say, you know, architecture is a hard profession, and we spend a lot of time behind drafting tables and looking at drawings. You know that, like everybody. And you've got to love the profession. You've got to love the art of architecture to be able to do well in it, because the payout takes a long time, 10, 20, 30 years, maybe even longer in some cases. And I think we do have a serious responsibility to make sure that the cities we build today are good enough for our children and our grandchildren. So that obligation, the obligation of investing in somebody else's future, is the most noble thing that I think any one of us can do.
All right. Thank you so much, Christos. Before I let you go, we have here the reading of citation for you.
Thank you.
So we'll ask KSA Western Region Chapter President John Marlew to read the citation. All right, let me just unmute. Yeah, Architect John?
Yeah, Architect Christian, pwede pa share yung citation, please?
Yep.
Thank you very much, Architect Christos and the whole Zaha Hadid Architects for that very detailed tour on the processes and execution you had with the Opus. I myself was amazed on how you carefully studied and executed, especially the glass facade, because I myself is in aluminum and glass facade works. So, with that, in behalf of the collaborating chapters of UAP, United Architects of the Philippines, let me read the citation. Certificate of Recognition. This certificate is represented to Christos Passas for inspiring the global Filipino architects of the Middle East and Southeast Asia chapters and motivating them with your presentation entitled The Opus, Dubai, presented by Zaha Hadid Architects, London, in celebration of World Architecture Day and as part of a series of UAP Talks, 2020 Talks, powered by the collaboration of 25 UAP chapters around the world, given the second day of October 2020 in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Signed by Architect Faustino C. Orculio, UAP, and Architect Christian R. Vasquez, UAP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm honored. I'm really honored about this, guys.
Thank you so much again, Christos. And yeah, regards to everybody there at Zaha Hadid Architects.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to spend this time with all of you. Thank you. And I hope to be able to see us in person one day soon. Okay?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people there in the Philippines who will love to get you, tour around you in the Philippines.
Let's make an appointment then for when this thing is finished, and I will travel and I will come and see you guys. Okay?
All right. Okay.
All right.
Again.
Thank you.
Thanks
you so very much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.
All right. Again, thank you so much to our chapter presidents, the 25 collaborating chapter president who made this happen. This is a history that unfold in front of us with 1,500 global Filipino architects, both here in FB and in Zoom account. Maraming salamat, Abu Dhabi, Aklan Boracay, Bahrain, Bataan Peninsulares, Capiz, Cebu chapter, Daraga Cagsawa, Dubai, KSA Eastern, KSA Riyadh, KSA Western Region, Kuwait, Malolos Republica, Manila Arquezonian, Manila Centro, Metro Tacloban, Nova Central, Oman, Palawan, QC Elliptical, QC Silangan, Rizal Cainta 101, Rizal Calaya and 101, San Pablo and Singapore chapter presidents. Dahil sa kanila, meron tayo Global Filipino Architects UAP 2020 Talks. Now, excited na ba kayo for the next one? Episode 3? Let's call it Architect Janelle from KSA Riyadh. Tell us some more about this next speaker for our UAP 2020 Talks, Episode 3. All right.
Alright.
Jonel.
Dinig niyo ba ako, no?
Yes. Kala ko nasa Pwede na tayo andito pa ba si Christos? Pwede tayo magtagalog. Now,
buti na lang, wala na siya.
Wala naman si Christos. Actually, we are streaming live sa kanilang Zaha Hadid office in London. So, yeah. All right. So, tell us more about episode 3.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, First Christian, and good evening to all architects around the globe. Good afternoon here in Middle East. Thank you for the time. Once again, I would like to thank architect Christos Passas, the design director of Zaha Hadid, for sharing his expertise how to design a spectacular building. So thank you, sir. Again, once on behalf of 25 chapter president around the globe, we are cordially inviting you to our UAP Talks episode 3, an architect, a dictator by one of the most powerful architects in the Middle East. It was by November 2020, so no definite date yet. We will for you update once it finalized. Once again, always remember, architects, UAPSA in the Philippines, always remember, nasa iisang bangka lang po tayo. Thank you, First Christian. Back to you.
Thank